The winter market was a kaleidoscope of frantic festive life, a stark contrast to the quiet stillness in Liam's soul. Twinkling fairy lights strung from every striped awning and bare tree branch cast a warm golden glow on the cobblestone square, making the gently falling snow glitter like diamond dust. The air was thick and sweet with the scent of cinnamon-dusted churros roasting, chestnuts, and the sharp, clean fragrance of pine from a nearby Christmas tree. Vendor, laughter, and the murmur of 100 conversations blended with the distant sound of carolers, creating a symphony of holiday cheer that felt both enchanting and profoundly alien. From his position near a stone fountain, its water silenced by the encroaching frost, Liam watched the world swirl around him. At 20 years old, he had the sharp, observant eyes of someone who spent more time watching than participating. His world, framed by the armrests of his wheelchair, was often a spectator sport. He'd been in the chair for 6 years, ever since the car accident that had taken his mobility but sharpened his wit and his empathy to a razor's edge. He had a cascade of dark curly hair that was currently dusted with snowflakes and a handsome fine-boned face that often held a wry knowing smile. Tonight, however, his expression was more pensive. A thick navy blue scarf was wrapped snugly around his neck and heavy blankets were tucked over his legs, a necessary shield against the biting December cold. He watched couples, hands clasped in mittens, lean in to share secrets and sips of hot cider. He saw a man lift his boyfriend effortlessly onto his shoulders for a better view of a street performer, their shared laughter echoing in the crisp air. A familiar pang, a mix of longing and resignation, settled his chest. It wasn't a bitter feeling, just a quiet ache for a connection he wasn't sure he would ever find. Not far from Liam, a man stood with a stillness that made him an island in the river of evening shoppers. He leaned against a lamppost, the light catching the deep brown of his cowboy hat, its brim slightly curved from years of use. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing worn shearling-lined leather jacket over a simple flannel shirt. His jeans were practical, not fashionable, and his boots were scuffed with the honest dirt of hard work. His face was weathered, with lines around his eyes that spoke of long days under an open sky, and a mouth that seemed more accustomed to a firm line than a smile. His name was Cole, and at 45, he was as out of place in this bustling city market as a hawk in a canary cage. Cole ran a ranch a few 100 miles outside the city, a sprawling expanse of land that had been in his family for generations. It was a life of solitude, of early mornings and punishing work, a life he usually cherished, but since his partner Mark had passed away 2 years prior, the silence of the open plains had started to feel less like peace and more like a crushing emptiness. He'd come to the city on a rare trip to sell some of his handcrafted leather goods to a boutique, and on his last evening had found himself drawn to the market, searching for a flicker of life, of warmth, of anything to push back the encroaching loneliness. His life was a series of sunrises, fence repairs, and lonely dinners. He was surrounded by the beauty of nature but starved of human connection. He felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of other people's joy. His gaze swept over the crowd, a sea of unfamiliar faces, until it landed on Liam. He didn't see the wheelchair first. He saw the intelligence in the young man's eyes, the way his head was tilted as he observed the scene with an Artist's focus, there was a quiet strength about him, a self-possession that was both intriguing and deeply compelling. Cole had dealt with pity his whole life. After Mark got sick, he recognized its hollow shadow and saw none of it in his own interest in the young man. This was curiosity, a pull toward a kindred watchful spirit. He pushed himself off the lamppost, his movements slow and deliberate, and began to walk toward the fountain, not wanting to startle him. When he was a few feet away, he stopped, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "Evening," he said, his voice a low, pleasant rumble that seemed to carry the resonance of wide-open spaces. "Quite a show they put on here." Liam's gaze shifted from the crowd to the man standing before him. He took in the hat, the weathered jacket, the sheer grounded presence of him. He was handsome in a rugged, unassuming way that Liam found himself immediately drawn to. A small, genuine smile touched Liam's lips. "It's the best free theater in town," he replied, his voice clear and steady. "The holidays bring out the best and most chaotic in people." Cole chuckled. "A warm, deep sound, that they do." He gestured with his chin toward a small, leather-bound sketchbook resting on Liam's lap. "You capturing the chaos." Liam's smile widened. He hadn't expected the cowboy to notice that, trying hard to get it all down, people move too fast. He felt a comfortable ease settling between them, a rarity for him. With strangers, there was no awkwardness in Cole's eyes, no fleeting glance down at the chair, just direct, respectful interest. "Sometimes the quiet moments are the ones worth catching," Cole said, his eyes thoughtful. He crouched down, a natural, fluid motion that spoke of strong legs and a life of physical work. The cold from the cobblestones surely seeped through his jeans, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Being at eye level was a gesture of respect. Liam deeply appreciated. "My partner Mark," he used to say that he could find a whole world in a single blade of grass. The casual mention of a male partner sent a quiet ripple of relief and recognition through Liam. He felt some of his own carefully constructed guardrails begin to lower. "He sounds like he was a wise man." "He was," Cole said, a shadow of old grief passing briefly over his features before settling into a soft fondness. "So what's the story with that coffee cart over there? Seems to be the busiest place in the whole market." Liam's expression softened instantly, his gaze following Cole's to a small, brightly lit cart across the square. A man in his early 40s with the same dark curly hair as Liam and a face that was both kind and etched with exhaustion was moving with practiced efficiency, pouring coffee, steaming milk, and making change. His name was George, and he was the center of Liam's universe. "That's my dad's cart," Liam said, a universe of pride in his voice. "He builds custom furniture during the day, beautiful stuff, real works of art, but the market is good money, especially around Christmas. He works every single evening so we can keep our apartment." Cole watched George for a long moment. He saw the worn elbows on his coat, the way he rubbed his tired eyes when he thought no one was looking, and the genuine smile he gave every customer. There was a quiet dignity about him, a resilience that Cole, who understood the weight of carrying on alone, recognized immediately. "He works hard," Liam continued, his voice softer now. "He's the best man I know, the absolute best." Cole looked back at Liam at the fierce, unwavering love in his eyes. He was witnessing a devotion that felt purer and more potent than anything he'd encountered in a long, long time. In his world, relationships were often transactional, built on land deeds and livestock prices. This was different. This was foundational. I can see that. Cole said gently. You must be incredibly proud of him. I am, Liam said. He hesitated, then a flicker of vulnerability crossed his face. Sometimes I wish I could do more to help him. He gets so tired. He hasn't had a day off and I can't even remember how long. Cole's heart, a part of him he thought had been permanently calloused over by grief, felt a distinct twinge. He had resources, not billionaire wealth, but the ranch was successful. He had a comfortable life, a life with room to spare. He'd been thinking about what to do with that room, with the emptiness that echoed in his large, quiet house. He looked at this brilliant young man and his hard-working father, and an idea born of genuine compassion began to form. Liam, he said, his voice serious but kind, I have a proposition for you. I have a large ranch house, fully accessible. I built it that way for Mark. There are ramps, a roll-in shower, wide doorways, the works. There's plenty of space. I could also make sure you had access to the best physical therapists, doctors, whatever you need. I could help your dad get his furniture business properly off the ground, give him the capital he needs so he wouldn't have to work himself to the bone every night. He paused, choosing his words carefully, wanting to convey the sincerity of his offer. I could give you both a good life, a chance to breathe. Liam's bright, intelligent eyes grew wide. He stared at Cole, processing the staggering generosity of the offer. For a moment, the sheer possibility of it was dizzying. His father, free from the crushing weight of financial worry, himself with access to care he'd only ever dreamed of. It was a fantasy, a fairy tale offered by a kind-eyed cowboy. In a winter market, Richard worried he'd been too forward, too presumptuous, but then Liam spoke, and his words, delivered with a quiet, heartbreaking wisdom, stopped Cole's world on its axis. That's incredibly kind, Cole, he said, softly, his voice thick with an emotion Cole couldn't quite decipher. But I can't accept. Cole felt a surge of both admiration and confusion. Liam, I would make sure your father was completely taken care of. This wouldn't be charity. It would be an investment in good people. But Liam was shaking his head, a sad, knowing smile on his lips. Now there were tears forming in his eyes, glistening in the warm market light. You don't understand, he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. It's not about the money. It was never about the money. My dad, he's all alone. I'm his whole world and he's mine, but it's not enough. He needs a partner. If I took your offer, if we moved out to your ranch, he'd just be trading one kind of work for another. He'd be my caretaker 24/7 in a place where he knows no one. He'd still be alone. The words hit Cole with the force of a physical blow. This young man understood a truth that had taken him years of grief to even begin to grasp, that loneliness wasn't a condition that could be cured by change of scenery or an infusion of cash. It was a deep, aching void in the soul that could only be filled by another soul. I see, Cole said quietly. And he truly, profoundly did. Liam wiped at his eyes with the back of his gloved hand. He looked at Cole, his expression filled with a maturity and insight that was breathtaking. Please, he said, his voice gaining a determined strength. Please don't help me, help my dad. Instead, Cole blinked, certain he'd misheard. What, help my dad? Liam repeated, his gaze intense and unwavering. He's the one who needs a family. He's the one who's been alone for over a decade, ever since my mom left. He's gay, but he's never had the time or the energy to even think about dating. His entire life has been about two things: his work and me. He works so hard and never complains. He never buys anything for himself. He makes sure I have everything I need, tells me stories, and makes me feel like being in this chair is a superpower, not a weakness. Tears were rolling freely down Liam's cheeks now, but he didn't stop, the words pouring out of him as if a dam had broken. He deserves to be happy. He deserves to have someone look at him the way those couples out there look at each other. He needs someone to come home to, someone to tell about his day, someone to hold him when he's feeling the weight of it all. He needs someone to take care of him for a change. Liam took a shaky breath, his eyes boring into Cole's. So, no, don't offer me a new life. Offer one to him. Get to know him. See the amazing man he is, not just the tired father of the kid in the wheelchair. He deserves to have his own love story. He deserves to smile more. Cole found himself completely speechless. He had negotiated with tough ranchers, face down charging bulls, and sat by his partner's bedside through the worst of his illness, but he had never in his life encountered courage and wisdom like this. It was a love so pure and selfless it was almost holy. Here in the middle of a crowded market with snow falling like a benediction around them, a 20-year-old was offering him the most profound gift imaginable, a map to the heart of a good man. He looked across the square at George, still patiently serving coffee, oblivious to the life-altering conversation taking place just yards away. Cole saw him differently now, not just as Liam's father, but as a person who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for years, asking for nothing, giving everything. Man who was by his son's account just as lonely as he was. Liam, Cole said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. You are without a doubt the most remarkable person I have ever met. Real watery smile broke through Liam's tears. Does that mean you'll think about it? Cole let out a laugh, a genuine rusty sound that felt like it came from a place deep inside him that had been dormant for too long. Yes, he said, yes, I'll think about it, but he was already doing more than thinking. He was feeling a profound shift within him, like a key turning in a lock he'd forgotten was there. Would you mind, he asked gently, if I went over and introduced myself to your father? Liam's face lit up, a brilliant, dazzling expression of pure hope that outshone every single light in the square. Really, you do that? Yes, Cole said, his own heart starting to pound with a nervous energy he hadn't felt in years. But I want you to know something first. No matter what happens, I'm going to find a way to make sure you and your father are okay, both of you together. Liam reached out his hand and Cole took it, his large, calloused fingers closing gently around Liam's. It was a simple, grounding gesture, but in it a pact was sealed. Cole stood up, his knees creaking in protest, and began the long walk across the square toward the coffee cart. This wasn't a business deal or a gesture of charity. This was real. This mattered. George was handing change to a customer when he looked up and saw the tall cowboy approaching. His expression immediately became guarded, the innate protectiveness of a single parent kicking in. He recognized the man who had been talking to his son. Can I help you? He asked, his voice polite but with a clear, weary edge. I hope so, Cole said, his voice steady despite the tremor of nerves inside him. He glanced back at Liam, who was watching them with a hopeful, anxious gaze. I was just talking to your son. George's expression immediately tightened with concern. Is something wrong? Is he okay? He's perfect, Cole said quickly, earnestly. He's more than okay, he's astounding. The tension in George's shoulders eased slightly, but the exhaustion in his eyes remained. Yes, he said, a hint of a proud smile touching his lips. He is. Cole took a breath. This was harder than any negotiation he'd ever entered, because the stakes were infinitely higher. My name is Cole, he began, and I came here tonight feeling a bit lost. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I met your son. George watched him carefully, his intelligent eyes trying to decipher Cole's intentions, people especially men who looked as self-sufficient as Cole usually wanted something. He told me about you, Cole continued, his voice low and sincere, about how hard you work, about the furniture you build, about how much he loves you, and he said something to me that, well, it changed my whole perspective. He decided against revealing the full, deeply personal nature of their conversation. That was a sacred trust between him and Liam. Instead, he chose a simpler, more direct truth. He made me realize I've been hiding away for too long. He reminded me that good people are still out there. George was quiet for a long moment, his initial suspicion slowly giving way to surprised curiosity. When he spoke, his voice was soft. My son has a way of seeing the good in people. He does, Cole agreed. Look, this is going to sound forward, but I was wondering, when does your shift end? George blinked, taken aback. In about an hour. Why? I was hoping you'd let me buy you dinner or a drink, somewhere warm. Cole felt a flush creep up his neck, feeling he hadn't experienced since he was a teenager. Your son taught me something important tonight, that sometimes you just have to show up. So here I am showing up. I'd like to get to know the man who raised someone like Liam. George looked past him across the bustling square to his son. Their eyes met, and in that silent, shared glance, a lifetime of understanding passed between them, a question from a father and an encouraging, hopeful answer from a son. When George looked back at Cole, the weariness in his eyes had been replaced by a tentative, flickering light. There were tears glistening there, but for the first time that night he was smiling, a real, genuine smile. My shift ends at 9:00, he said. There's a diner 2 blocks from here. Martha's. It's nothing fancy. Cole felt his heart soar, a feeling of pure, unadulterated hope. Nothing fancy, he said, his own smile finally reaching his eyes. Sounds perfect. That evening, the three of them sat in a worn red vinyl booth at Martha's Diner, universe away from the cold winter market. The air smelled of coffee and frying bacon, and the low hum of conversation was a comforting balm. They shared a plate of apple pie and drank hot chocolate, and for the first time in years, the crushing weight on George's shoulders began to lift. Liam, witty and charming, told stories about his dad's disastrous attempts at baking that made them all laugh until their sides hurt. George, hesitant at first, slowly began to open up, talking about his passion for woodworking, for taking a rough piece of timber and finding the beauty within it. His voice, filled with a hope he thought he'd lost, was a revelation, and Cole listened, truly listened, feeling more present, more connected than he had In the 2 long years since Mark had been gone, as they talked, Cole realized the profound gift Liam had given him, not by accepting his offer but by refusing it. He had shown him that love isn't about providing or fixing, it's about seeing and listening and choosing to be there. It's about recognizing that everyone, no matter how strong, needs someone to help them carry the load. Family wasn't something you could acquire, it was something you had to build piece by piece with patience and presence and unwavering support. Over the following months, Cole became a fixture in their lives. He didn't come as a benefactor or a savior, but as a friend. He drove into the city on weekends, sometimes bringing fresh eggs from his chickens or a cut of what he thought George would appreciate. He'd sit in George's small, cluttered workshop watching him work, the two of them talking for hours about everything and nothing. He and Liam would spend afternoons in the park, Liam sketching the world around them while Cole talked about life on the ranch, about the stubbornness of his cattle and the beauty of a prairie sunrise. Slowly, tentatively, friendship began to blossom into something more. Cole and George discovered a shared sense of humor, mutual respect for hard work, and a deep-seated loneliness that they recognized in each other. They learned that they both knew what it felt like to build a life around caring for someone you love and the quiet ache left behind when that purpose shifts. For George, it was a slow reawakening of a part of himself he'd long considered dormant. For Cole, it was the discovery that his heart, which he thought had been buried with Mark, was still capable of feeling, of hopping, of loving again. One crisp autumn day, they all drove out to the ranch. George's eyes widened at the vast rolling hills and the endless sky. Cole watched as Liam, maneuvering his chair with practiced ease along the accessible ramps, let out a whoop of pure joy, the wind catching his dark hair as he raced down the porch. That evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky hues of orange and purple, George reached out and took Cole's hand. It was a simple gesture, but it was everything. A year later, on a snowy evening much like the one where they had met, the winter market was once again alive with twinkling lights. Cole led George to the stone fountain, now adorned with holly and ribbons. Liam was waiting for them, a knowing, radiant smile on his face. Cole turned to George, his heart pounding a steady, certain rhythm in his chest. A year ago, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I came to this market a lost and lonely man. I thought I needed to find someone to fill my empty house, but your son, with his incredible wisdom, taught me that I was looking for the wrong thing. He taught me that I didn't need to fill a house. I needed to help build a home. He knelt, not with the creak of a middle-aged rancher, but with the steady grace of a man who had found his purpose. Liam wheeled forward, holding out a small, handcrafted wooden box that George immediately recognized as his own work. Cole took the box and opened it, revealing a simple silver band. George, he said, his eyes locked with the man who had resurrected his heart. You and Liam have shown me what family truly is about showing up. It's about choosing each other over and over again. I choose you. Will you marry me? Will you and Liam build a home with me? Tears were streaming down George's face, but he was laughing, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy that echoed in the cold night air. Yes, he breathed, his voice catching. Of course, yes. Cole slid the ring onto his finger, and as he stood, the three of them came together in a tight embrace, a perfect unshakable circle of love, as the snow fell softly around them. Cole finally understood he hadn't just found a partner in George, he had found a family. Liam had been right all along. The greatest act of love isn't just loving someone, it's asking the world to love the person you love most, and sometimes if you are incredibly, miraculously lucky, the world says no more. Thanks for watching.